All right, let's dive into human emotions. You want to learn more about feelings, and The Book of Human Emotions by Tiffany Smith seems like the perfect place to start.
It really does seem like a fascinating read.
You know, it's funny you mentioned wanting to learn more about feelings.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about just how many different emotions there are?
Well, I guess I haven't really thought about it too much.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
This book actually explores over 150 emotions.
Wow, 150.
Yeah.
I never would have guessed.
It's so much more than just happy, sad, angry, you know?
Right, right.
The author, Tiffany Smith, dives into all these fascinating examples from different cultures
Yeah.
and even how things like technology shape the way we feel in the modern world.
It's amazing how much our environment and technology can affect us.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so 150 emotions, that's a lot to unpack. Where do we even begin?
Well, right away, Watt-Smith challenges that simple view we have of emotions.
So there's only a few basic ones.
Right, like just a handful.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of the German word Schadenfreude?
Schadenfreude. I don't think so.
It's that feeling of secret pleasure you get when someone else experiences misfortune.
Oh, wow. I definitely know that feeling.
Right.
I guess I never realized there was an actual word for it.
That's a great word, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So learning about all these different emotions is
Yeah.
kind of like expanding your emotional vocabulary.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's not just about having a fancy word to use.
Right.
Understanding those little nuances can help us better understand ourselves
I see. Yeah.
and the people around us.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of understanding people, the book explores emotions from all over the world, right?
It does, yeah.
What were some of the most surprising cultural differences that stood out to you?
Well, one that really sticks with me is this Japanese emotion.
Oh,
Ambo. And it's kind of hard to translate directly,
Okay.
but it's centered around this feeling of pleasurable dependence on another person.
Pleasurable dependence.
So, imagine
Yeah.
that feeling of being cared for and indulged by someone you trust.
Okay. Yeah, I can kind of picture that.
Yeah. And it actually plays a significant role in Japanese social dynamics,
Interesting.
highlighting how important close,
Yeah.
interdependent relationships are in their culture.
That's so interesting.
It is.
It really makes you realize how different cultures
Yeah.
might actually value different types of emotions.
Absolutely.
It's not a one-size-fits-all experience at all.
No, not at all.
What other examples come to mind?
Let's see. There's this Russian word, doska,
Tosca.
and it's describing a very deep, almost soul-crushing kind of longing.
Oh, wow.
It's this feeling of emptiness and yearning.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to translate.
It sounds heavy.
It is,
Yeah.
but it speaks volumes about the Russian worldview and their relationship with melancholy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It almost sounds like a much heavier, more existential version of sadness.
it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then there's this term from Wales, hiraeth.
High wraith. Okay.
It encompasses this intense longing for a home you can't return to,
Oh, wow.
a place that maybe doesn't even exist anymore.
Oh, I see.
It's like this profound homesickness
Yeah.
mixed with grief and nostalgia.
Wow. That's powerful.
It is, very much so.
These examples are really incredible.
Fascinating, right?
It makes you appreciate the power of language
Uh-huh.
to capture these subtle, complex emotions that might
Right.
otherwise just be lost in translation.
Completely agree.
But amidst all this incredible diversity, are there some core emotions
That's the website.
that we all seem to share?
Yeah.
Like, regardless of culture?
Yeah, the classics,
Yeah.
happiness, sadness, anger, fear.
Right, the ones that seem to just be universally human.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember learning about Paul Ekman's research
Oh, yes.
on facial expressions.
Right.
He found that people from all over the world recognize the same expressions for these basic emotions.
Exactly.
So his work suggests there's a biological basis for them,
I think so, yeah.
even though how we express them
Right.
can still be shaped by our cultures.
Of course.
Think about smiling, for example.
Yeah, good example.
In some cultures, it's common to smile at strangers.
Right.
But in other cultures, it's really reserved for close relationships.
Very true.
And you can have those awkward moments
Yeah,
where you
definitely.
misinterpret a smile while traveling.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It really shows how important it is
Yeah,
to understand the cultural context of emotions.
absolutely.
But let's get back to those universal emotions,
Okay.
particularly the ones that we tend to label as negative. I found it really interesting how Watt-Smith
Yeah,
challenges that perspective.
she does, yeah.
Like, she argues that emotions like anger and sadness
Hmm.
can actually be valuable tools for growth.
I agree. I think she's right.
Okay, so this is where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
How can something like anger be beneficial?
Well, think about it this way.
Yeah,
We often think of anger as destructive, especially if it's uncontrolled.
right, that makes sense.
But what Watt Smith is saying is that anger itself isn't bad.
Oh, okay.
It can actually be a powerful force
Okay,
for positive change.
interesting.
For example, think about times when anger has motivated you
Mm-hmm.
to stand up for yourself,
Yeah.
or to fight for something you believe in,
Okay, I see what you mean.
or to set healthy boundaries in your relationships.
It's more about channeling that energy
Exactly.
in a constructive way.
Exactly.
Instead of letting anger control you,
Yeah,
you learn to understand its message
right.
and use it to fuel positive action.
That's the key.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And what about sadness?
Well, sadness is another one that we often try to avoid, but it plays a crucial role
Okay.
in processing difficult experiences
Oh, I
and
find.
allowing ourselves to heal.
So it's like giving yourself permission to grieve,
Yeah, exactly.
reflect,
Yeah,
and ultimately come out stronger on the other side.
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's a necessary part of life, you know?
It is, yeah.
I think we're so quick to label emotions as good or bad
Mm-hmm.
without really considering their nuances
Right.
and potential benefits.
Yeah.
It's more about learning
Okay.
how to manage them effectively.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
And that brings us to this really important concept, emotional literacy.
That's right.
Okay, so what exactly does emotional literacy mean?
Well, it's essentially being able to recognize and understand your own emotions
Okay.
and also being able to manage them.
Uh-huh.
And it also involves being able to empathize
Okay.
with the emotions of others.
Oh.
So it's really about developing a deep understanding
Mm.
of this language of feelings.
So it's not just about knowing what you're feeling,
Right.
but also being able to express and
Yes.
regulate those emotions in healthy ways.
Exactly.
And it also involves being able to recognize those emotions in other people,
Yeah, that's right.
which is so crucial for building strong relationships.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's really the foundation of empathy and connection.
It is.
Think about it. If you can accurately read someone's emotional cues,
Mm-hmm.
you're so much better equipped
Yeah.
to communicate effectively,
Right.
to avoid misunderstandings.
It sounds like emotional literacy is essential, but how do we actually develop it?
Well, it's a bit of both nature and nurture.
Okay.
Some schools are starting to teach emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
but a lot of it comes down to self-awareness and effort.
Okay.
The book actually offers some techniques for developing it,
Oh, that's interesting.
which we can dive into a little bit later.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about that. Because it seems like it's really key
It is. It is.
to navigating all the complexities of modern life,
Absolutely.
especially with technology
Oh,
and
yeah.
all the challenges that brings.
That's a great point.
Right.
And it actually leads perfectly into the next part of the book,
Okay.
where Watt Smith explores the impact of the modern world
Okay.
on our emotional landscapes.
Okay. I'm ready.
Yeah.
How is technology shaping the way we experience and express emotions?
Well, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
How so?
It connects us in ways we never thought possible.
Yeah.
But it also presents these unique challenges
Okay.
to our emotional well-being.
Right. I mean, think about social media.
Yeah, perfect example.
On the one hand, it helps us stay in touch with people far away, but it also bombards us with these curated, seemingly perfect lives.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all these highlight reels of everyone else's experiences, and that can lead to some pretty unhealthy comparisons.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
You scroll through your feed, and suddenly you feel inadequate.
Totally.
Like you're not measuring up
Yes.
to
definitely.
some impossible standard.
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, I've definitely been there.
Yeah.
It's like everyone else is living their best life, going on these amazing vacations,
Yeah.
achieving all these great things.
Right.
And I'm just, trying to make it through the day without spilling coffee on myself.
Exactly.
It's easy to get caught in
Those
that
full loop.
cycle of comparison and
Yeah.
envy.
Yes. And that can be really damaging
So-
to our self-esteem and our happiness.
Watt Smith talks about FOMO,
Yes.
fear of missing out,
Right.
which has gotten so much worse.
It's amplified, for sure.
With social media,
Yeah.
we're constantly seeing
Yeah.
images and stories of other people having fun.
Yeah.
And we start to feel anxious
Yeah.
and inadequate.
Yep.
if we're not participating in everything.
Yeah.
It's like this digital race to keep up with the Joneses.
It really is.
And it's not just social media, right?
Oh, no, it's not.
The constant news cycle
Yeah.
and all the information coming at us, that can take a toll as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
We're constantly plugged in, bombarded with news and notifications.
Yeah.
And it's so overwhelming. It feels like you need to know everything that's happening all the time.
Yeah.
And it's so much negativity and conflict in the news.
It is.
It's easy to feel stressed and anxious.
Yeah, and even hopeless.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like information overload, but on an emotional level.
That's a good way to put it.
And it's hard to know how to manage that.
It is.
Because technology is so ingrained in our lives now.
It is, yeah.
I can't imagine not having my smartphone.
I know, right?
But I also recognize that I need to set boundaries and make my mental health a priority.
I think that's so important.
The book actually talks about
It does, yeah.
managing that digital overload.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. What were some of those suggestions?
Well, one of the simplest things, but maybe the most effective, is creating tech-free zones.
Tech-free zones? What do you mean?
So maybe designate certain times a day or areas in your home where you just completely disconnect.
Okay.
No devices allowed.
I see.
It allows your mind to rest and recharge.
I like that.
Without that constant stimulation.
Yeah. It's like a digital detox for your brain.
Exactly.
Another thing I struggle with is this feeling of always needing to be on.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I feel like I need to respond to every email and message instantly.
Right.
It's hard to disconnect.
It is.
When you feel this pressure
to
always be available.
It's that 24/7 culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The book mentions setting boundaries around communication.
Yes, it does.
So instead of feeling like you have to be available all the time, you set specific times to check your email and messages.
That's a great strategy.
It's about taking back control of your time and your attention.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's easy to feel like technology is in control.
It is.
Rather than us being in control of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I really appreciate that the book offers advice for navigating these challenges.
It does, yeah.
It's not about demonizing technology.
Right.
It's about figuring out how to use it in a way that actually supports our well-being.
I think that's crucial.
And that awareness brings us back to emotional literacy.
It does, yeah.
The more we understand our own emotional responses to technology, the better we can make choices about how we interact with it.
I completely agree.
It's like we need to develop emotional intelligence alongside our digital intelligence.
That's such a good point.
Speaking of emotional intelligence, I'm curious about those techniques for developing emotional literacy.
Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned them earlier.
Right.
What are some of those exercises or practices that stood out to you?
One that I thought was really interesting is called emotion labeling.
Emotion labeling.
It's actually a pretty simple practice.
Okay.
But it's really about consciously naming the emotion that you're feeling.
Oh, I see.
In the moment.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're feeling overwhelmed by your to-do list, instead of letting that feeling just take over, you acknowledge it. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now.
Okay.
And that simple act of naming it can help you detach from its intensity.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you're acknowledging it, but not letting it control you.
Right, exactly.
You're taking away some of its power.
Exactly.
I see.
It's like shining a light on it, you know. You're bringing it out of the shadows into your conscious awareness.
I like that.
Once you've identified it, you can start to explore it more objectively. Ask yourself, what triggered this feeling? What thoughts are going through my mind? What am I physically feeling in my body?
So it's like becoming a detective.
Yeah, exactly.
Of your own emotions, uncovering those clues and patterns that are driving your feelings.
That's a great way to think about it.
I can see how that could be powerful.
It is.
For self-awareness and emotional regulation.
Absolutely.
And this ties into another important aspect
of
emotional literacy.
Yeah.
The connection between our emotions and our identities.
Yes, exactly.
Watt Smith explores how our emotional experiences actually shape who we are.
Yeah,
how we see ourselves.
It's a really fascinating concept.
So how exactly do our emotions contribute to our sense of self?
Well, let's think about it for a second.
Okay.
Our earliest emotional experiences, the way we were cared for as children, the relationships we formed, all of these things really contribute to our emotional development.
And those patterns from our early years, they often carry over into adulthood.
They do.
Right.
They shape how we interact with others, how we respond to challenges, how we view ourselves.
So it's like our emotional history becomes part of our personal narrative.
It does, yeah.
The story we tell ourselves about who we are.
Yes, exactly.
And is that a fixed story?
Well, not exactly.
Okay.
It's constantly evolving as we go through life.
Oh, okay.
As we have new experiences, new relationships. But understanding the roots of those emotional patterns can give us valuable insights
Oh, I see.
into why we react the way we do.
It's like recognizing those threads that connect our past to our present emotions.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah. But if our emotional identities are always evolving, does that mean we're not stuck
No, not with this.
with those patterns from our past?
No, not at all.
We can change?
Absolutely, we can change.
Right.
That's the beauty of emotional literacy.
Okay.
It helps us become aware of those patterns. We can question them and choose different ways of responding.
So it's not about erasing our past.
No.
It's about learning how to write a new chapter.
Exactly.
One that's more aligned with who we want to be.
That's beautifully said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This whole conversation has been so eye-opening.
It's a fascinating topic, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see emotions in a whole new light.
Yeah.
Not just as fleeting feelings,
Right.
but as these powerful forces
They are, yeah.
that shape our lives and our identities.
Absolutely.
It really makes you realize how important it is to cultivate a healthy relationship with them.
It is. It's crucial.
Exploring all these different facets of emotions with you has been quite a journey.
It has. It has.
From the diversity across cultures to the impact of technology and the power of emotional literacy.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
But I think we've just scratched the surface.
We have.
And it's just a glimpse of what Tiffany Watt-Smith explores in the Book of Human Emotions.
I have to say, it's making me want to read the book.
Oh, you should.
It really is.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
But before we wrap up this part, I'm curious to hear your final thoughts on what you think is the most important takeaway for our listener when it comes to navigating this world of emotions.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Let me think for a second.
Okay.
I think the most important thing is just not to be afraid of your emotions.
Okay.
You know, whether it's joy or grief or anger or serenity, all these emotions, they serve a purpose.
Yeah.
They're signals trying to tell us something about ourselves.
Yeah. Ah, I see.
And our needs.
So instead of pushing those feelings away, which I know I do sometimes.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
We should try to lean into them
and
figure out what they're trying to say.
That's where that emotional literacy comes in, right?
Exactly.
If you can recognize your emotions, understand them, manage them.
Then you're not at their mercy anymore.
Right.
You become the captain of your emotional ship.
I love that.
So to speak.
And it's not about being emotionless, right?
No, not at all.
We're not trying to be robots.
Right.
It's about accepting that full spectrum of human emotions.
That's what makes us human.
And remembering that even the negative emotions, like sadness or anger, can actually teach us something.
They can. They can.
Like you said earlier, they often have an important message.
Right.
Maybe anger is telling us that a boundary has been crossed.
Yeah, could be.
Or sadness is telling us to slow down.
It might be, yeah.
Reflect.
Exactly.
If we just listen closely, our emotions can guide us.
They can.
Towards growth and self-discovery.
Absolutely.
And they can help us connect more authentically with other people.
That's so important, isn't it?
It is.
Those connections.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening for me.
It has been really interesting.
It has.
To talk about all this.
I feel like I have all these new tools now for understanding my own emotions.
That's great.
And I'm excited to keep exploring these ideas.
Me too.
You know, it's funny. We've been talking about all these different facets of emotions, the diversity across cultures, the impact of technology, and that power of emotional literacy. literacy.
It's a lot, isn't it?
It is.
To think about.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
We have. We really have.
There's so much more to explore in the Book of Human Emotions. And Tiffany Watts-Smith really dives deep into all of this.
She goes into so much detail.
I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to understand this whole world of feelings.
It's a fascinating read.
It is.
Oh, sure.
But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on this whole topic of emotions.
All right, let me gather my thoughts.
Okay.
What do I want our listener to walk away with today? Yeah, so much of what we've been talking about comes down to understanding ourselves better.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing for our listener to take away.
Okay, I like that.
Just understanding yourself better.
I think that's a great place to start.
It is, yeah.
What are some of your final thoughts?
Well, we've covered so much.
We have.
But what do I hope our listener really remembers? I think it's this.
Okay.
Don't be afraid of your emotions.
Oh, okay.
You know all those feelings, whether it's joy or grief or anger or serenity.
Right.
They all serve a purpose.
Okay.
They're like signals trying to tell us something about ourselves.
So instead of pushing those feelings away, which I know I'm guilty of.
We all do it.
Yeah, we do.
You should try to lean into them and figure out what they're trying to communicate.
That's where that emotional literacy comes in, right?
Exactly.
Being able to understand those signals.
Yeah, and manage them.
And when you can do that, when you can recognize your emotions, understand them, manage them.
You're not controlled by them anymore.
Right.
You're in the driver's seat.
Okay, yeah.
You're the captain of your emotional ship.
I like that analogy a lot.
So to speak.
And it's not about becoming, some emotionless robot.
No, not at all.
Right.
We need those emotions.
We do. Yeah.
They're part of us.
It's about finding that balance.
Yes.
Accepting all of those human emotions.
Absolutely. The good and the bad.
Highs and lows.
Right. It's all part of
what makes us human. Being human.
Exactly.
And remembering that even those, quote, negative emotions, like sadness or anger,
they can teach us things.
They can.
Yeah, they can be valuable.
It's like you were saying, maybe anger is a sign that a boundary's been crossed.
It could be.
Or sadness is telling us to slow down and reflect.
Maybe we need to reevaluate something.
Right.
Yeah.
Emotions can guide us.
They can.
If we just listen to them.
They can lead us to growth.
Yeah, to growth.
And self-discovery.
It's been amazing.
It has, yeah.
Exploring all these different ideas about emotions with you.
I've really enjoyed it.
I have too.
Yeah.
And I feel like this deep dive has really opened my eyes.
Oh, that's great.
To a whole new way of seeing emotions.
That's wonderful.
And I feel like I have a whole new set of tools for understanding my own emotions.
I'm glad to hear that.
I am too, yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
It has.
Unpacking these ideas with you.
Likewise. And to our listener, I really encourage you to keep exploring this too.
Yes, keep learning.
The journey of understanding your emotions.
It's lifelong.
It is. It really is.
It's about curiosity.
Absolutely.
Self-compassion.
And being open to what it means to be human.
I love that.
Yeah.
And if you're ready to dive even deeper, I definitely recommend checking out The Book of Human Emotions.
By Tiffany Watts-Smith.
By Tiffany Watts-Smith.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating read.
It is.
It really is.
And as you go about your day today, maybe take a moment to ask yourself, what emotion am I feeling right now? And what is it trying to tell me?
It's a powerful question.
It is.
To keep in mind.
It is.
It reminds us to stay curious about our own emotions.
It's been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure.
Talking with you. Likewise.
Until next time.
Yeah, until next time.
Keep exploring.
Happy diving.